Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and you gators and grannies, to this Friday morning edition of The Big Puzzle, coming to you live from my kitchen in northern British Columbia through the facilities of UCY TV. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining in. Today I'm joined by a very, very good friend, and a man that, to say that I have a great deal of respect for would be an understatement. A gentleman I believe has been solely responsible for exposing thousands of people to the incredible healing properties of extracts of cannabis. And of course I'm talking about Rick Simpson. Welcome to the show, Rick, and thanks for joining me today, buddy. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Hey, Rick, are you there?
Yes, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Rick. Good morning.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to be with you.
Well, it's actually
Barry.
it's good afternoon. It's good afternoon over there, but good morning over here.
Yeah, but this is not just about the healing powers of cannabis extracts. It's also about exposing the corruptions of governments really worldwide. You know, this is ridiculous what they're doing, and what I'm calling for is total repeal of these idiotic laws, you know, against a plant that is non-addictive and has never caused any harm in human history. You know, it's ridiculous what's happening here.
Well, we see it everywhere, Rick. We see the control mechanisms coming in. We see Monsanto genetically modifying it. There's so many things that are going wrong when it comes to this plant right now that I totally agree with you that nobody in my world has a right to control something that was put on this planet and has so many benefits for the human body.
Yeah, it's a horror story when you look at Monsanto and companies like that becoming involved in this. It's, you know, to genetically modify cannabis, what's the purpose? I mean, we already know that this plant has magnificent healing powers, so why do we need to genetically modify it? You know, it's, what they want to do, they want to take the healing powers out of this plant. That's what they're out to do. And people like Mr. Trudeau and groups like that, or governments like that, are actually helping them to facilitate this end. Because, I mean, all of these companies that they've given, I think there's over 70 companies now in Canada that have been granted licenses, you know, to grow and produce extracts. Now, I'm just wondering what the quality of these extracts are going to be. And from what I understand, they're already having a lot of problems with them. So, you know, I'm saying set the plant free, let everybody grow their own if that's what they wish to do, and without any taxation at all, of course. But the only need I see for regulations or anything of that nature would be to companies that want to, you know, that want to produce these extracts on a grand scale and sell them to the public. You know, I mean, then in a case like that, you need quality control and standards, and let the governments tax these companies, but leave the ordinary citizen alone. We pay enough taxes already.
Well, of course, Rick, this is just, I mean, the whole government involvement, what we talked about a minute ago with Monsanto. You really hit the nail on the head there, because what I see them doing is, of course, genetically modifying this to a point where all the benefits are taken out. I mean, the last thing they want is society to be healthy. And if you think for 1 minute they're going to allow us to have this in its natural form and have it heal our bodies the way it's intended to, I think you have your head in the sand. This whole thing is just a control mechanism to really take it away from us, and people think it's a good thing, Rick. I'm so peeved what I see going on in the movement right now. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, what gets me is, that these governments even have the nerve to think they have the right to control this plant. I mean, they never had the right to. Yeah, I mean, nobody has the right to outlaw the most medicinal plant on Earth, and that's exactly what they did. And now they want us to forgive them and let them regulate it. I say damn the governments. We've had enough of their manipulation. We've had enough of this nonsense, and they've already killed far, far too many people. So set the plant free, and we set ourselves free.
Your voice is not alone, Rick, because thousands of people are resonating exactly what you just said right now. We've all had it up with the government, and you're right. This plant was on this planet for thousands and thousands of years, has been used by society for thousands and thousands of years, and here we are in a situation today where the government is going to control it, modify it, take away its good properties, and give us something that's crap and tell us they're doing us a good thing. I mean, my God, Rick, things have really, really spiraled downwards as far as I'm concerned in the movement. It's not legalization, guys, the word we should be using. It's decriminalization, period.
No, it's repeal. It's repeal, Barry.
Repeal it.
Decriminalization and legalization also come with a lot of regulations and restrictions and heavy taxation. Repeal.
Okay.
Take these laws, throw them in the garbage can because that's where they belong, and they should never have been put in place.
Well, we know how it all happened, Rick. Anybody that's studied the history of hemp will understand how it was taken away from society and how it was criminalized and absolutely demonized in our society. And we're just really now getting to a point where I think society is waking up en masse to the deception.
Well, so I think it's
people
time
like
that
people like you are. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I think it's time that people like Justin Trudeau actually stood up and admit what has taken place here, and ask the Canadian people to forgive them, for this travesty that they've been part of. This all happened in Canada in 1923. That's when they put these idiotic laws in place against the Indian hemp plant. And ever since that time, every succeeding government has backed that same nonsense. Is this what we really have to represent us? Idiots and dummies and corrupted people who don't know right from wrong? Because apparently this is the case. And I think it's time that we put an end to this. And it's like I've said so many times before. The whole party system has to go, because the parties all become corrupted by the big money interests. And in the end, all of these parties, no matter who's in power, they're working for the person that's putting the money in their back pocket. And unfortunately, although we pay them high salaries, the big money is willing to give them a bit more. So I think it's time that these people started working for us, and I think we need independent people in politics, not parties.
We got to clean the whole house out, Rick, because it's corrupt right to the core. What we're seeing in this industry, in this movement right now, is just a reflection of everything the government does. If you think for 1 second they want anything good to come to the public, then you really do have your head in the sand, and we can talk about multiple aspects of government attack on our health. And along comes this plant. You think they're going to let us have it? I think you really are being deceived, people. This is not the way we have to go with this. I agree with you 100%, Rick, that we should all be able to use it for our food, for our fuel, for our medicine. Rick, one thing that you said to me years ago that really resonated with me is that, when we look at all the problems we have right now on this planet, environmental, with our food, with our health, you said once to me, and I kind of chuckled when you did, and I think I've said this to you a couple times before, that you said this plant can literally heal this planet from the inside out, not just the planet, but the people from inside out. And I chuckled, and that was when I was just starting to really, I'm kind of ashamed for saying that, because the first couple of years I really, I wasn't really looking at this, Rick, till you came along in my life, buddy, and you really opened my eyes to it, and I thank you for that. But you never made a more powerful and correct statement in your life, as far as I'm concerned, and that resonates with me every day, and it's so true. It is so true.
Well, it's the plant that can save us all. But people have to wake up and realize that, we've been deceived and lied to about this plant. All the detrimental things we were told about cannabis was nothing more than a pack of lies. Cannabis has never harmed anyone, and it also happens to be the greatest medicine on earth, or it can produce the greatest medicine on earth. This is why they don't want us to have it. Because, if we all had the right to grow and produce our own medicine, which we actually do have this right as human beings, because it states that right in the Christian Bible, so, but this would have a detrimental effect on the pharmaceutical industry, wouldn't it? Well, what a shame that would be. When I look at Health Canada, Health Canada and the DEA in the United States, everything these idiots are doing, or the FDA, excuse me, in the United States, everything these idiots are doing goes against the Hippocratic Oath. Because it says right in that oath, first do no harm, and it also states, I shall not administer poison. Now look at all the pharmaceuticals that are available that Health Canada and the FDA support. They're all, liver toxic, poison to our livers. And they also back the use of chemotherapy and radiation. Cancer-causing treatments, for God's sakes. I don't know why people can't wake up to the fact that they're being deceived. It's so damn obvious. And they always say about people like me, they're conspiracy theorists. So was Dwight D. Eisenhower, when he was president, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy, when he was also president, when they warned us about the military-industrial complex and the huge conspiracy that these people are perpetrating, well, are these guys conspiracy theorists too? Wake the hell up. It's time to see this world for what it is. We are being deceived, and we are being literally slaughtered. And it's time to bring this nonsense to an end if we are to evolve into something better than we currently are.
Well, Rick, the way we're going to do that is by sharing knowledge and sharing our passion for what we see going on, and that's what we're doing here right now, buddy. I feel your passion, and I understand where you're coming from and how you feel, and I share those sentiments 100%, buddy. And I know that if this was brought widespread back into society, that big pharmaceutical would cease to exist. You said to me once, Rick, said, boy, if somebody had a jar of high-grade oil beside their bed and they took 1/3 of a gram every day of their life, and of course after taking it for a couple of weeks, you're not going to get a buzz off it because your body's acclimated to the THC. But what it does to your body, buddy, I've been on oil now for 4 years, and I take it regularly every day, and it is my body at 63, buddy. Well, I looked at a picture of you yesterday. I saw you on Skype there. And my God, Rick, for 68 years old, you're looking pretty good. And then you showed me your 30-year-old wife, and I'm going, what? This stuff is obviously working, guys.
No, there's a bit more to that than just a 30-year-old. She's not 30, she's 36.
Well, actually, 36. Well, she's in the 30s, and she's in the 30s, and you're almost 70. So you're doing something right, my friend.
Well, we both,
what a beautiful lady.
She's a religious anthropologist, and she's a college professor. In fact, she's writing her PhD on cannabis medicine. So we work together, on this whole thing. And she does lectures at these speaking events the same as I do. So I'm very thankful to have her, and she's been a great deal of help. Before her, I was basically in this all alone, and that's a very hard road to travel. So I'm very thankful that she's working with me.
I just say, blessings to you, man, because it sounds like a match made in heaven, and I'm really happy for you, Rick, because you were alone, and now you found a soulmate, and that really makes life worth living, as far as I'm concerned, especially when she connects with you on so many different levels. I look forward to having conversations with her sometime in the future here. Maybe we can get her on a radio show here one day, Rick. I'd love that, and get her input. Yeah, we could do that maybe in a month from now. I'll get you back in. We'll set her up and we'll get her in on the show and let people hear her comments.
Yeah. Well, she is a religious anthropologist, so she knows a lot about ancient religions and their connection to cannabis. So she has a great deal of history behind her. So, I think it'd be a great idea to do a show with her. Matter of fact, I'll mention it to her.
I've had quite a few people in the chat room there say good morning to you, Rick, so I'm just passing that on to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, and why don't you bring people up to snuff what you've been doing here in the last little bit. A few people have been asking me where you've been, what you're doing, who you're talking to, and what you see going on in the movement over in Europe. I know you're based out of Croatia, but you've been traveling we were just in Amsterdam, apparently, and I know you've been over quite a few places in the last year. I have a hard time keeping up with you, buddy, because every time I talk to you, you've been 10 different places. So can you bring people up to what you're doing right now and where you're heading next?
Well, I'm supposed to be going to Athens, I think, on the 9th. We're supposed to do an event there on January 9th. I'll be leaving, and the event, I think, is from the 12th to the 14th. So that's what and there's several other places, events that want me to come and speak to in the near future. It's hard to keep them all, organized in your head. But lately, what I've been doing, or over the last while, I've been contacted by quite a few different groups and or companies and individuals that seem to be interested in the same things I am, and that is to get the quality of this medication up to its highest levels and bring the price down to a point where people can afford it. That's the problem right now. And people are being robbed, and they're getting low quality extracts. And again, I must warn people: don't be deceived by companies that are saying they're providing the Rick Simpson oil, because I have nothing to do with any of these people, or any foundations or anything of that nature. So please don't be deceived by this nonsense. We get these emails all the time, every day. Is this address, this email address, affiliated with you? And I'm never affiliated with any of them, because the only email address that I have anything to do with, is the phoenixtears.ca, email address, or my wife's publishing company, simpsonramador.com, and that's all I have anything to do with, at the present time. But I'm looking at several different groups here that I'm trying to get them to come together, to unite, and work together to bring the medicine out properly to the people, and to prevent these big pharmaceutical companies and big money interests from taking over this industry. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the public. And that's the reason years ago when I put up the phoenixtears.ca website and we told the whole world how to heal themselves, my intention was simply to empower people with the knowledge they needed so they could treat themselves effectively with a harmless plant, that nature provides. That was my aim. It was nothing to do with making a bunch of idiotic companies who are out to rob you rich. What's going on today is truly pathetic. And I look at the U.S., oh my God, what a nightmare that place is. And you look at all these groups like, Normal, and even people like Cheek and Chong, all down on their knees, please legalize, tax and regulate. What's wrong with their heads? These people are not cannabis activists. They're being, the big money is behind them. That's what it is. And they're working they're working against the best interests of the public. What I've always said: set the damn plant free. Nobody has the right to control this. And and you or I if we want to grow and use this plant and we could grow 100 or we could grow 500 plants in our backyard. It's nobody's business but ours. As long as we're not trafficking or harming anyone, then it's nobody's business but our own. And it's just about time the governments realize this.
Exactly. On the black market now, if a person wants to get their hands on high-grade cannabis oil here in British Columbia, you're paying $50 to $60 a gram for this stuff, Rick. Well, my God, folks, if this was brought back and we demanded the use of this and we started planting fields of high-grade cannabis, we could get the cost down to $1 a gram, so everybody in the world could afford to use it. But of course, they're not going to allow that to happen unless we share this knowledge that we're sharing right now. Rick, this is so critical, I feel, for the future. Go ahead.
Well, it is true that, these extracts can be produced. It depends on the area and the cost of, what you have to pay employees and things like that. But this medicine can be produced very cheaply. And, I would be quite happy, to see if companies would grow and provide this medicine, say, at $10 a gram for the highest grade extracts. I would have no problem with that. If you got cancer, you need a cancer treatment, it costs you $500 or $600, you've got your treatment. That's something that most people can afford. So I like I say, I have no problem with that. But it's such a shame that, I've seen companies in the U.S. like Cannasense, I think was the name of one of them. And I went to their website because they were claiming they supply the real Rick Simpson oil. I go to their site, 1 gram of RSO, $130 American. That's highway robbery. These people are nothing more than gangsters.
How can anybody afford that, Rick? Of course, they're putting it out of the realm of most people's ability. And of course, if they can't get it, they're going to go to the doctor and let them radiate them. What a travesty.
Well,
but yeah, $1 a gram. When I said $1 a gram, I was kind of using that more as a figure, Rick. I know the price won't be that, but like I said, I'm seeing in Canada right now to the dispensaries is $60 to $70 a gram. And most people can't afford that if they have to take, I mean, the optimal treatment, we've talked about this, the optimal treatment for cancer is getting yourself up to about a gram a day. And most people can't afford $70 a day when it means their life is on the line. It's just a real shame. And we could change it, folks, just by sharing knowledge. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I mean, to me, it's also obvious, you know, and I mean, of course, for years I've watched thousands of documentaries, and I mean, you connect all the dots and you see who's really running our world, you know, and all these organizations, you know, the United Nations and the World Health Organization. I see recently they just come out and said basically that everyone really does have the right to do this. When I look back at what the United Nations themselves, you know, did back in 1961 when they put the Single Convention Treaty in place, or in 1954 when Harry Anslinger had them agree that cannabis is a non-medicinal plant. I mean, how could anybody forgive these people? And it's more than obvious to me that the UN and most of these big organizations with these fancy titles, they're all being controlled by the big money. That's what it's all about.
Of course,
you know, but people, you know, like, there's no reason why any of us should have any respect for the United Nations or any of the rest of that crowd. You know, they're just a bunch of gangsters and criminals. That's what they are.
Exactly. And if people really started looking at the UN, Rick, they would really resonate on what you're saying. They studied the League of Nations and how it was all put together and who's behind it. You'd want to walk away from it. Yet we see them controlling a lot of aspects of our lives now, and more to come. So we really got to wake up to this, folks. It's time for civil disobedience, as far as I'm concerned, Rick.
Well, I agree with you, Barry. And
that's our duty. That's our duty, folks.
It is. It is. If you want to see, you know, a decent world or a decent future for our children and our grandchildren, it's up to us to make it happen, because these people are not going to help. You know, and when you look at all these governments today, you know, and they're so concerned about money laundering, when in reality they're the biggest money launderers on the planet. You know, it just disgusts me. You know, they go on, oh, you know, we're fighting the war on drugs. Yeah, well, why is it that, you know, like I said, what are, you know, the troops doing in Afghanistan? You know, guarding the poppy fields where most of the heroin supply on the planet comes from. You know, these are American and Canadian soldiers and other countries. These soldiers are guarding these damn plants for them. This is ridiculous.
Rick,
and then you look at this.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to add a comment.
Then you look at all these things, you know, like, you know, the American government fighting this war. Well, wasn't it the CIA that was importing all the cocaine into the United States in those big cargo planes from Central and South America? You know, they got the whole damn country addicted to cocaine. But, you know, so, you know, if the FBI or somebody in the United States actually wants to stop this, perhaps they should arrest the CIA.
Well, Rick, it's just a coincidence they were landing in Bill Clinton's backyard. Come on.
Well, of course it is.
Nothing to see there, buddy.
And he never had sex with that woman either.
No, and he's never told us a lie.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Rick, I'm going to try and stay away from talking about government today, because it really gets my blood boiling. If people knew really what was going on in my country right now, I don't know why people aren't marching in the streets right now, but then I do, because our society has been so divided through multiculturalism that Pierre Elliott started in the 60s. And now his son is just ramming down our throats in unbelievable ways. And Canadian people, I'll tell you, he's kind of shooting himself in the foot here, Rick, because a couple of weeks ago he announced that Canada is going to allow ISIS fighters back into Canada. And Canadian taxpayers' dollars are going to fund reintegration programs for these ISIS fighters and release them back into Canadian society. And Canadians are going, what the are you talking about? So in a lot of ways, he's at this point, Canadians are really, and I see it on social media, I see it on all the sites that are talking about Trudeau via Facebook. Of course, the enemy is allowing us to still post this stuff. That's going to be taken away shortly. But I see an incredible rise in social media. One of the polls that just came out, Angus Reid released a poll yesterday, Rick, and the government's not going to like this, because Trudeau's popularity now has gone down to 41%. He's in the negative for the first time the government's been in power. And Angus Reid's are pretty accurate polls, so the government's not going to like to hear that today, but that'll make the news today for sure, because that was just released last night. Canadians are waking up in droves. Now, what we can do about it, Rick, I told myself I wasn't going to talk about Trudeau today. I'm going to get off the subject. Okay?
It's hard to avoid.
It is, because you know what, buddy? Right now, believe it or not, I'm fighting for my country. I mean, I'm here. I don't have a choice to, like, I wish I could be where you are right now. But in the same mouthful, I love this country. I love the perceived freedoms that we have. I love what I've been able to grow up in, and I see that all being taken away from my children. And boy, I'll tell you, if we don't stand up against this, Rick, things are going to change really, really quickly in this country, and people aren't going to like it. So the window's still there to do something about it, Rick, but it's going to close soon. This government's out of control. Go ahead.
Well, this is not the same country that we grew up in. I mean, you know, I remember the 1950s, the 1960s. It seemed that the future was bright in Canada. And it should be bright. I mean, when you look at the size of Canada and the wealth and natural resources that country possesses, you know, and the small number of people, you know, 33, 34 million people in the whole damn country. I mean, everybody in Canada should be rich, for God's sakes. You know, but they let the big money interests come in and take it all over and rob, you know, all the natural resources, steal all the money, and then, you know, Mr. Trudeau and the central bank
back to us and taxes for it.
yeah, you know, the central banks, you know, we owe them interest. We owe them nothing. These central bankers are nothing but thieves, and everybody knows it. And even Vladimir Putin here a while ago, he threw them out of Russia. Get the Rothschilds out of Russia. And I think that's the smartest thing that any country anywhere can do. Iceland did it. There's several other countries now in the process of doing it. So we got to get rid of the central banking system because, again, it's nothing but a bunch of gangsters. And they've been robbing and stealing from us forever. You know, this is so ridiculous to see this happening.
I agree with you 100%, Rick, but we have monumental problems doing that because of how society is now set up, how the whole world is focused on currency and who controls the currency and what these people can do with that control of currency. And I see some real crazy times coming up because right now there's an information war going on. People are really, really waking up. I mean, look what's going on in the United States of America right now. It's just unbelievable, the corruption that's being exposed in the FBI and the Department of Justice. I mean, it's absolutely a joke, but people are really starting to get pissed off about this. I think they're going to push society to a point where they want us to be civilly disobedient, and henceforth comes martial law. We know the United Nations has got their fingers all over the United States right now. They're impacting a lot of things that are going on inside the government there. It's all charade. Anybody thinks that it's not a charade, that we're not seeing two sides of a charade being played out right now in the United States of America, you got your heads in the sand, because they're all in the big party, Rick, and we're not invited, buddy.
Well, that's what's going on. But, you know, I look at countries like the U.S. and Canada and, you know, and their military, you know, the possibility of the military actually picking up arms against their own people. What the hell is this? You know, this is not real, for God's sakes. And I hope these people in the military and the people in the police, you know, forces, you know, all over the world come to see this for what it really is. I mean, they have sick and dying loved ones, too, that this wonderful medication could help. So, I mean, you know, what are they doing, you know, backing the efforts of the people who are trying to harm us? You know, this is beyond conception.
Yeah, and I've always believed that, you know, right now these people that are perpetrating these agendas on low levels inside our world right now, when the time comes, they're going to be just as disposable as you and me. Only they don't see it and they don't realize it. So I hope some of them are listening to us today. I know they are. They always listen to our conversations. Everything we're saying right now is being listened to by some agency for sure. We know that without a fact. So I hope that a few of them are listening, and I hope a few of them can make sense out of what we're talking about right now.
Well, to be honest, I don't see any future for the rich elite. If they carry on the way they have been or try to continue on, I don't see any future at all for them, because there's, you know, people all over this planet are finally starting to wake up to what the hell is really going on. And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, I mean, these people, obviously, they're just psychopaths. That's what they are. They're all about greed and money, and they don't give a damn who they have to harm to get it. But, I mean, it's time for us to get rid of these people, you know, or take the money and power away from them. You know, we can't let this continue on, because, you know, if we leave them in the situation they're in right now, they're just going to continue to dominate our existence. And that cannot be allowed.
Well, I think I'd push it even one farther than that, Rick. I don't know if there will be an existence on this planet if we keep going the way we are right now. And like, I've never considered myself to be a fear-mongering type of person, but I have to look at things with common sense. And I look at what's going on with the planet, with our mammals, with the seas, with our oceans, all the reports that I read, and I read lots of them, tell me that if we don't make changes here drastically in the very, very near future, all this political crap will mean nothing because we're not going to have a planet to live on. Sense goes the insanity of these people that call themselves the elite. What are they going to have left when there is no life on this planet? Are they going to live in their little arcs for 1,000 years? It's just insanity. It really is. I mean, I myself, I see this planet dying right now, and boy, I'll tell you, I don't think I could have ever said that to myself 20 years or 30 years ago, Rick, but I see it now.
Oh, I do too, brother. I mean, there's no question here. If we continue on this path for another 10, 15 years, we could all wind up extinct because they're poisoning this planet at such an alarming rate. You know, and we're not designed to live in a poisoned environment. That's the reason you're seeing such an increase in all these different diseases like cancer. You know, we have to detoxify this planet, and we have to detoxify ourselves. And the cannabis plant can help us do that. So to me, it's the only logical answer, you know, to give us a future. There's nothing else. There's no other plant on earth that can do what the cannabis plant can do, you know, for our overall well-being. And I'm not talking, you know, I'm not talking just about just about jobs. You know, I actually think that if we use the cannabis properly, we could put an end to unemployment. We could put an end to starvation. And we could also put an end to all this nonsense about the energy crisis. We can grow our own damn energy, and we always had that ability until they put these foolish regulations against cannabis in place. You know, and practically everything we use in our day-to-day lives can be produced from cannabis. Over 60,000 different things can be manufactured from that plant. You know, long-lasting, durable cannabis. That's what we need. You know, we got to get rid of these toxic industries that are killing the planet, and we got to get rid of these toxic people who actually control these industries.
Yeah, I was talking to you yesterday about Just Biofiber out of Calgary, and I'm getting involved with that company big time because what they're putting forward right now, Rick, will actually revolutionize our world, and it could do that in 2 generations. It would give us some real hope for the future because everything with the hemp plant, everything I tell people there's a bridge in Europe that was built 600 years ago, and they're still using it today, and it's built out of hemp. And they go, what? I say to people, how would you like to build a house that can't burn? Well, this company in Calgary now is marketing, and we're just at the marketing stage. I'm going to be selling this product up in the north here, Rick. I mean, it is absolutely a no-brainer. When you look at what this product will do compared to conventional building materials, it is absolute. Anybody with even an IQ of 7 or 8 will realize that this is the way to go. And it's something I'm going to be pushing really hard because what it's going to do, Rick, it's going to, for one, it's going to revolutionize our building materials. It's going to stop the forest industry. Deforestation needs to come to an end. One of the studies I did, Rick, and I kind of looked at this and I vetted it through a couple other studies, is the drop of oxygen production in the planet. It's a fact now that we've lost 48 to 50% of the plankton that were alive in 1968 are now dead in the ocean. And plankton produces 60% of our oxygen that we breathe on this planet. The other 40% comes from trees and forests, and we're destroying both. So we need to put a stop to it. Remember we were driving around BC there, Rick, and we're driving down, I think we're down the Kootenays, and we're driving along, we see all these empty fields, no hay, no nothing growing on them. And we both kind of looked at each other, and the both time we said, they should be covered in cannabis.
Yes. Well, it was the same thing back in Nova Scotia. I mean, back where I come from, when I was a child, I remember all kinds of fields everywhere. You know, wide open, not being used. Eventually, these fields all grew up. You know, so what I say, you know, if you have a nice piece of land that's already been flattened out and all that work's been done to it, well, go in and take the brush off it and open it up as farmland again and grow cannabis or any other beneficial crops. Yeah, I mean, put people back on the land. That's what we need to do. Make them self-sufficient.
I read one study. It was a peer-reviewed study of the effects of industrial cannabis grown on land. And what we need to do is grow a crop of industrial cannabis for 2 years on that piece of land, then grow a conventional crop on the same piece of land, and it will grow approximately, now I read 2 reports on this, and approximately 30 to 40% more yield off that land simply because you use that land to produce industrial cannabis, because the root systems get into the soil and release microbes that normal growing conditions never release. It's unbelievable some of the reports I've read on the effects of industrial cannabis on toxified soil, heavily toxified soil from oil, nuclear isotopes in soil. I've read a report on that, 2-year study done in Japan. I'm sure you're aware of that study. Well, the plant has so many answers to the problems we have, but we got to embrace it, guys. Because, like Rick said, if we keep going down the path we are right now, and I couldn't agree with him any more true from my heart, that if we keep going down this path right now, we are not going to have existence of life on this planet. Period. And I mean, of course, we could just even look at nuclear to verify what I just said. I mean, nuclear insanity is what I call it. I mean, this station has quite a few shows on nuclear all the time, and I applaud them for that, because most people really aren't aware of the perils that we're facing from the nuclear industry. And it's all got to come to a stop, Rick. We got monumental tasks in front of us, we do, but I think we still have a window to do it if we can get people passionate about the future of their children. And that's what it comes down to, guys.
Well, if you're not passionate about the future of your children, then I can't even call a person like that a human being. You know, it's not all about you. It's about the future, and it's about all of us. You know, and this is what we need to do: work together to make this world a better place for everyone. This is what has to happen. But, you know, it's if you're just going to sit there in your Chesterfield and wait for somebody else to do it, chances are it's never going to get done. It's up to us. This is our watch, and it's our duty to do this, and to do it as quickly as possible. Because the faster we put an end to this nonsense, the faster we can put an end to all this suffering. And then we can really start rebuilding this planet into what it should be.
This planet could be a utopia if it was left to be the way it was supposed to be, Rick. Everything I see going on my planet right now drives me nuts, and it's all because we are conditioned to believe that this is the way it's supposed to be. And that is so far from the truth, guys. It really is.
Well, I've got to the point, Barry.
Oh, I lost him. Not hearing you, Rick. Are you guys hearing Rick over there? Because all of a sudden he dropped. They don't like us talking, obviously. Yeah, I don't have you here, Rick. I don't know if you can hear me, buddy, but I'm not hearing the feed through the station here at all. Yeah, I've lost him. I'm going to try and get him back here, guys. And obviously we're saying things they don't want us to say. But we've got to expect that now at this particular point. The all attack is on. So I'll just see if I can get him back here, guys. Hold on. This is happening quite regularly now on shows for us. And I don't even see him on Skype. Wow, man. Sorry, guys, I'm really, Skype just beat me out there for a minute. I don't know what happened there, but they do this, seems like, on a regular basis now. I'm going to try and get Rick back in here. Wow. Now, tell me, guys, this is going on by accident. I know, Jules told me prior to the show today that they were having a little bit of trouble with the server, but I'm still here, and Rick has been bleeped out, and I'm not being able to get him back in here for some reason. I don't know what to say, guys. I was really getting into a good conversation with him there, and anytime I get Rick on, we do have these conversations because we both see and feel the same way. And it won't bring him in for some reason, guys. Unbelievable.
Okay, I see. Join ongoing call.
Hey, there you go. Did they let you back in, Rick? Okay,
I think,
we got it back.
I think what it is, every time you say something over Skype that offends the rich elite, for some reason Skype starts acting up.
Well, yeah, that happened to me last week on a show. It happened to me on Sunday. I was on a show and I got into some conversations, and all of a sudden we were bleeped. And to say it's just happening by accident, I think you'd have to have your head in the sand. We know the all-out attack is coming, Rick.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. Try to keep the truth from the public, and that's what we're exposing. But, damn, if somebody don't expose the truth, we don't have a future. And this is what it's all about. People like us, we're not being well paid or even paid to do this. We're just doing this because we feel it's the right thing to do. And I hope people understand that. There's no money angle in this. We just want to see a better world.
Well, yeah, Rick, and I know your heart's in it, buddy. I saw that when I got to spend time with you in British Columbia here, and you're in this for the same reason I am. I don't get paid to do this, but I know that if we don't share these thoughts and our opinions and get people to really look at some of the things we're talking about right now, that we're really looking at a very, very bleak future for our children. And Rick, honest to God, I can go into a supermarket now and I look at a young child, and I think about what's coming for them in the future, and it literally brings tears to my eyes, because what we're leaving them is just one big pile of crap. But we still have a window of opportunity here if we can get the masses to rally and people really start paying attention to the fact that this is the time that we need to make these changes, not 10 years down the road. Maybe we can rally the troops. I really hope so, Rick. If not, we're looking at a pretty bleak future, my friend. Go ahead.
Totally bleak future. That's what it'll be if we allow this to continue on. But like I said, cannabis supplies us with so many rational solutions to most of the problems that we currently face. How dare these governments restrict its use? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, unless you're working for the rich elite, which they obviously are. So it's like I said, I think it's time that Mr. Trudeau and people like Donald Trump just stand up and for once in their life be a man. Stand up and tell the public, apologize to the public for what has taken place here. Because, we're talking over the last few decades, billions of people have suffered and died for no reason other than greed. And these governments, they're the ones that are causing this, because they're the ones that put these idiotic laws and restrictions in place. They had no right to do this. They created the black market. For God's sakes, we grew cannabis as a farm crop for thousands of years. If we were still allowed to do so, you could go out and buy a pound or a kilo of the top-grade cannabis bud for $10. It's a farm crop. The damn governments, and like I said, they created this black market themselves because they illegally outlawed the use of this plant, and they know it. But they don't want to admit this to the people.
Well, I watched Reefer Madness, Rick, and I'll tell you, just the fact that was released as a documentary on the evils of cannabis, it shows you how far they went to actually demonize this. And of course, the word marijuana was applied to that, and away we went. I tried not to use the word marijuana at all, Rick. Of course, people universally identify with that word, but I try not to use it because it was never called marijuana prior to 1939, I believe it was, when they brought the slang word in.
We have to give credit, where credit is due. And when you look at, the conspiracy to keep this plant from us, look at the role that those Zionists who run Hollywood, look at the role they played. It wasn't just Reefer Madness. They made dozens of these idiotic movies. Keep your children away from the evil reefer man and all this nonsense. Jesus. It's the only safe thing I know that, the teenagers could actually use that wouldn't harm them. When you look at the pills today, I was back to Canada just recently, and to see these people on the streets, like young people, like in their 20s and 30s, all drugged up on pills, staggering around the streets, and driving their cars and whatnot. It's unbelievable. Talk about a drug-addicted society, and they think that, that we shouldn't have the right, to grow cannabis. It's so ridiculous that a government would throw people like us in jail for growing a God-given, non-addictive plant. What right? This whole thing is just insanity of the first degree. And when you look at the number of years that people have spent in jail time alone in the U.S. and Canada, in regards to the growing and use of this plant, I just find that inconceivable. We're talking about millions of years of jail time for what? Something that is not even a crime.
yet they'll push psychotropics on you like crazy, man. And I mean, just look at in the United States right now. I just read a report on the amount of Ritalin that's being given to children in the United States of America. And I saw figures of 6 million children are now on Ritalin in the United States of America. I mean, my God, folks. It is beyond insanity, Rick. But you know what? I think people are really, really starting to pay attention to some of the things that we're talking about today. And I see that coming. But to me, it has to come in a mass wave right now, because one voice or 50 voices won't be heard, but 10 million voices will be heard. And that's what we need to do at this point. We can't sit on our couches. We need to get actively involved. If it's not in the cannabis movement, there's many other things we can do to take little pieces out of that giant wheel that's running over top of us right now in all aspects of our lives. Rick, I haven't had a bank account now in 2 years. And people go to me, how can you function without a bank account? Well, you know what, folks? I function quite well. I will not support a bank in any shape or form, because I know how badly they're screwing us up the butt. That's just one example. I mean, we got to walk the walk if we're talking the talk. And I looked at banking and I said, you know what? I don't need a bank account. I'm closing it down. Here you go, guys. And I'm functioning quite well, guys. So go ahead.
I'm glad to hear that, brother. I'm really glad to hear that. But it's not just the banks. I mean, look at what Bill Gates is doing with his damn vaccinations. As far as I'm concerned, we should all tell Bill Gates to shove his vaccinations where the sun don't shine. I mean, that man is a total lunatic as far as I'm concerned. But they put these people up like they're honorable people who are philanthropists who are doing good for the planet. These people have never done any good for anybody but themselves. That's what they're all about, and they don't give a damn about you or me. This is so damn obvious.
Wait a second, Rick. Rick, they tell us over and over and over again that vaccines are safe and they'll never do us any harm. That's why they have the Vaccine Injury Compensation Board that's paid out, $5 billion in settlements, I believe it is, the number is. But they'll never harm you guys. Never. And yet, when you take a settlement from the Vaccine Injury Compensation Board, you have a gag order on you. Great, eh? Mm-hmm. They've got it all set up. You know that every prescription that's sold in the United States of America, Rick, a tiny percentage of that prescription sale is taken off and sent to the Vaccine Injury Compensation Board. They've got it all covered, buddy. I mean, vaccines, I don't even get into vaccines, Rick, because that's a travesty in our society. What's happening to our children, we're allowing this to go on, how they're mandating, vaccines in our society. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind, folks? When are we going to stand up to this? If we don't here, folks, we're really sliding down a very, very slippery slope.
Well,
drive me nuts, Rick.
Well, the harm they're causing. I did a show here a few months ago with a group or radio station in Ireland, and this lady named Vera Tomei, she was on there, and she has a daughter that was a bad epileptic. And she tried CBD extracts, and they did reduce the number of seizures that the child suffered, but they didn't stop it completely. So when I was on the show, I told her, I said, you need to have THC in the extract you're using. And from what I understand, she did that, and ever since she started using THC, the child hasn't had a seizure. But during the show, I asked this lady, I said, did your child have any vaccinations? And she said, yes. I said, how long was it after the vaccinations before she started having these seizures? This lady told me it was 8 hours later. Mm-hmm. That should give you an idea how dangerous these damn vaccinations really are. And this is going on everywhere. Forced vaccinations. You must vaccinate your child. Well, when you go to take the child in for the vaccination, you take it in and you bring a baseball bat with you. And you tell the person that's going to stick that needle in the child's arm, if you do that, I'm going to use this baseball bat on you.
Well, either that or ask them if they're going to give this to their own child.
Yeah,
and you'll get the answer. You know why, Rick? I had the honor of interviewing Todd Bollinger here about 3 weeks ago on another network, and he's released 2 series. Of course, the Global Quest on Cancer, The Truth, Global Quest on Cancer, and they also just released a 10-part documentary on vaccinations. And I urge people to go to the internet and watch them. If you give your child a vaccination after watching these series, then you truly are, you're not a human being, because vaccines, to me, buddy, look at the flu shot, Rick. Look at the reports of the flu shot. Maybe 10% effective. I mean, it mutates. They store it in egg embryo and it mutates. They're giving you a vaccine that's basically ineffective for the human body, but it's full of adjuvants, full of formaldehyde, and everything else they put in this. And you want to stick it in your body? Buddy, I will never, ever take a flu shot in my life, and I know a lot of people now that are waking up to it, Rick. So we are impacting people, and people are starting to wake up, but not quick enough.
I mean, even like I worked in a hospital myself, and back in the early 70s, I was called into the administrator's office, and because I wouldn't take the vaccinations. And he said to me, he said, well, Rick, you're working around the public. You could cause, damage to, some of our patients. And I said, well, if they've had their flu shot, what danger could I pose? He just looked at me with a stupid look. And I told him, I said, I will not take these vaccinations. And he said, well, you'll have to, if you want to work here, that's what you'll have to do. So I just looked at him and I said, I quit. I turned around, I almost made it to the door, and he called me back and he said, well, if you're that adamant about it, then go ahead, we won't force you. But I watched all of those nurses that worked in that hospital where I worked. I watched them all take their damn vaccinations. I watched them all get sick. I worked in that hospital for 25 years. I never got sick. I wonder why.
It's called natural immune system buildup. And boy, when I was a kid, Rick, I had measles, I had mumps, I had chickenpox. I think I had every childhood disease that was ever invented. And I never got vaccines for them. And now I feel my immune system is really strong. It's because you build up a natural immune system. And that's the way our body was intended to work. And it's all being taken away from us. We got to wake up to it, guys. We really do. Because what's going on is total bullshit. Total.
Well,
I can't say it any other way.
Our bodies want to.
Sorry for my language. I don't usually swear. Go ahead.
Our bodies really want to heal. I mean, sometimes they need a little bit of help to do that. Especially, like I said, we're living in a poisoned environment, and cannabis can fulfill that role in a magnificent way, I might add. And I want people to understand something else too about this plant. It's not just about cancer. This plant is basically, a medicine that can be used in any situation. But what people have to understand is that all of these different types of cannabis, like I always use the indica strains, but the indica strains vary, but most of them do seem to be very effective in the treatment of cancer. There's no question about that. But some are better for pain relief than others. Some are better for lowering ocular pressure for glaucoma or controlling blood sugar and the damage that diabetes causes. So, people have to understand this. And that's the reason I've always said it's best if you're a grower to grow like 4 or 6 different high-quality indica strains. And after you produce the extracts from these strains, mix them together. And then you get this overall healing effect, like a basically what you could only call a cure-all. But people have to understand this, that all cannabis is not created equal. But it is the greatest healing plant on this earth. There's no question, and that was a well-known fact long before the time of Jesus.
Absolutely, and if 1/10 of the money that was spent on military every year was put into cannabis research, you see a monumental change in our society. Remember, I had you on once with Dr. David Allen. Do you remember that interview, Rick?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, he said it to us in that show, and it's something I resonates in my mind all the time, is that, the discovery of the endocannabinoid signaling system in the human body is the greatest discovery in medical science, period, bar none. And yet only 13% of the universities even touched on the subject. He said, he's been studying this now for 15 or 16 years of his life, and he still can't understand how it all works. But he said to me, and I think he said the same thing on that show, you don't have to understand how it works. All you have to understand that it does work. It's one of the most incredible mechanisms in our body. Henceforth, when we stimulate that mechanism with cannabinoids, we see the results we see in all kinds of human disorders. There's a video going around, I'm sure you've seen it, Rick, of an ex-RCMP officer here in Canada whose Parkinson's was so bad, he's 74 years old, when they went over and did this to him. They took a notary into the room, they took in a bit of high-grade oil, and this man's hands were shaking so bad that he couldn't pick up a fork. They gave him some high-grade oil, and 1 hour later, all his seizures had stopped. He said he had never felt better in 15 years, and he broke down in tears because he realized all his life he persecuted people for something that was doing something miraculous to his body. What a hypocrisy in our society, guys. But we're waking up to it, Rick. And the passion you share and other individuals, it's starting to resonate with people, guys. It really is. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I felt terrible last year or was it last year? Well, yeah, I think it was a year ago when Muhammad Ali died. And I tried to get in touch with him, and tell him about, the healing powers of these extracts because he had Parkinson's. And I know it could have helped him, and I think that Muhammad Ali would still be with us if if I could have got through to him. But now they got this other one. There's Michael J. Fox. He has this foundation for Parkinson's, and from what I understand, they've taken in $750 million. And it's actually on the internet that he's using RSO. Did Michael J. Fox ever contact me to offer assistance? No, he never has. And it's the same thing in Canada and the same thing with the Terry Fox Foundation. How much money have they raised? Terry Fox is actually a Canadian legend, and the man was trying to do good for everyone. But his family after that, they formed this foundation. They've taken in all this money. What have they done with it? It's ridiculous what's happening here.
Well, it's like any foundation when money starts coming in. Rick, look at MAD in Canada and what they're doing right now. What a bunch of crap. I mean, it's the same. No matter what we look in society, we see the same effects of money on corporations, Rick. And until we change that, until we can change people's way of thinking about things.
Why would MAD be concerned with cannabis, for God's sakes? I mean, I know you smoke cannabis. You know that I smoke cannabis. I've driven with you. You drive perfectly. You drive in a perfectly safe manner, the same as I do. Cannabis doesn't affect your motor skills.
I drove you all over BC in that old motorhome, Rick, and I don't think we did a mile of that straight, did we?
Don't think we did, Barry.
or not under the influence of the evil cannabis plant. No, that was a great trip, Rick. I keep saying.
Oh yeah,
before we only got a couple of minutes left here. We only got a couple of minutes here, but 3 groups in BC here. If you can ever want to come back here, are willing to put up some money. So I thought I'd mention that on the air today because they've been hounding me constantly about getting you back to British Columbia, buddy. So maybe something you might consider in the future here, and we'll put up the funds for you.
Well, that sounds good, brother. And I mean, if I can get the time to do it, I'd be happy to comply.
And I'll organize.
Right now, I'm so damn busy.
I'll organize the whole gig for you.
Okay, you can look into it.
The first time we did that, Rick, that was a starter for me. But I'll organize all the venues and get you your plane tickets and money up front, buddy. There's people here that really like you to come back. So I'll just leave it with that today.
Well, the only thing
we're down to the last minute here.
Okay, I would just like to tell people that
we're down to the last minute.
Yeah. I'd just like to tell people that if you go to my website, phoenixtears.ca, all the information is there that'll enable you to produce your own extracts. The dosage instructions, everything is really already available on the website. And I also have 2 books out on this subject, Phoenix Tears, The Rick Simpson Story, and Phoenix Tears, Rick Simpson Oil, Nature's Answer for Cancer. And they're also available on my website. And they're available from Simpson Ramador. And you can get the e-books from Amazon Kindle. So that's really all I have to say. But, I want people to be able to help themselves. And if you go to the phoenixtears.ca website, you can do just that.
Amen. And I ask everybody to go have a look at this and really start sharing this information because it's critical at this particular time in history, Rick, and I honestly believe that. Buddy, it's always great getting you on. I love talking with you, and we'll do this again in the very, very near future, hopefully. And I'll get back to you about this gig in BC because we'll talk off air about that, but I've been approached by a few groups, and we'd love to have you back, Rick, and I'd love to drive you around the province again. That was the best time I've ever been in my life. It was a blast, buddy. And folks, I think we've hit on some pretty good subjects today, and I want to thank you for joining me. I know we're down to the last 30 seconds. The banner's going to kick in here in a second, and hopefully you'll join me next week. Believe it or not, Rick, I'm going to bring in a Canadian MP next week to talk about Trudeau, and I'll probably have a heart attack because my blood pressure is going to boil. But thanks again for joining us, guys, and see you next week, same time, same place. Have a great week. God bless you all, man.